Hello and welcome to Bloomberg Quint. This is our very special report where we have breaking news, and the special broadcast is on the appointment of the new CEO, that is the Infosys CEO. After nearly 4 months after Vishal Sikka has stepped down as CEO of Infosys, the board has appointed Salil Parekh as the new MD and CEO of the company. Parekh will take charge from January 2nd next year, and the interim CEO, UB Praveen Rao, will be back as the Chief Operating Officer of the company. Of course, Parekh himself was a part of Capgemini for 25 years, and most recently as a member of the Group Executive Board of the company, and he was also the chairman of the company's North America Executive Council. Now, a lot of investors will have questions with respect to what Mr. Parekh can bring to Infosys, and several other factors, because we know it for a fact that not only Infosys but the entire IT industry does face some headwinds with respect to demand and changes of technologies and changes in client trends. So we are all very curious to know as to what Mr. Salil Parekh can bring. But what we do know is that we're joined by Menika Doshi, who is the managing editor with Bloomberg Quint. Hi, Menika. Your initial thoughts?
Well, this is a good move for two reasons, and I'll spell them out very quickly. I think Salil Parekh has both domestic understanding and global experience, and so I'm sure that while we will continue to weigh his strengths and weaknesses in being able to fulfill the task ahead at Infosys, to begin with, this seems to be a good move. And secondly, I think they've managed to close the matter much faster than any of us had anticipated. I know there were many questions on whether Infosys would be able to find someone willing to lead the company forward, given the backdrop of promoter and board issues that have occurred in the last few weeks and months. And therefore, I think the fact that they have been able to identify someone who's willing to take on that challenge is good news. I think they've said that Praveen will be the COO from here on. So Salil will have the support of someone who understands the company and has been there for a very, very long time. And that, I'm sure, will be a welcome thing for Salil as well. So I think on these 2 or 3 counts, this seems to be a good announcement at this point. I'm sure we will continue to assess the strengths and weaknesses of Salil Kapoor in being able to take this company to the next phase of growth.
Okay, I think we also have Sudhin Apte of Offshore Insights joining us. And of course, we also know that Sudhin has been tracking the sector for a very long time. Sudhin, thanks for joining us. Tell us, what do you make of this appointment when it comes to Salil Parekh?
Sure. I think first point, it is good that they have got a person from outside who is fairly senior, would be based, sort of near client, as well as knows the offshore location. So I think, from experience and profile perspective, surely a good fit. So that's my point number one. Point number two, I think, it's good that, it's not delayed further. So from timing perspective, they had said October end, for appointment, slightly delay here and there, which is okay. So, good that they have come to conclusion and have got somebody who is fairly experienced, can handle this scale, because, Capgemini is a fairly of a similar scale. So, very similar experience, very similar profile of business handling. So, good fit, prima facie.
Sudhin, the last time we spoke about were certain concerns that had to do with Infosys. This is, of course, the cloud around the various reasons that were in speculation behind Vishal Sikka stepping down. Since then and now, what is it that investors, according to you, will keep an eye on when it comes to this particular appointment?
Well, I think the concerns remain, and irrespective of the person who comes in the chair, the growth need to come back. The stability in organization is very much required. They need to have a clear direction, and possibly now need to leapfrog in terms of digital automation, the maintaining or defending the traditional services business, which is like 80-odd% for Infosys. So I think those things are very much important. But I think one uncertainty has gone, which is a good news, I guess. And that's why I say that, now they have a person who, prima facie really feel that, a decent fit for the role. Let's see how things evolve. But the concerns in terms of unfinished agenda, obviously one has to see how they, perform on those parameters.
Right, Sudhin. So when it comes to the role of this new CEO and MD, how much of the challenge is to do with Infosys itself, and how much of it that has to do with the entire industry and the challenges that the industry faces?
Well, I think a good point in a sense. See, the industry is undergoing tremendous transformation, right? The way clients are buying technology in terms of the scale, in terms of, the periphery versus back-end IT systems, which was Indian IT company's strength, newer technologies, the role of business leaders in decision-making. I think a lot of those things are changing, not only for Infosys, for everyone, which we had been saying for last, 2-3 years, and is going to continue for some time. And in fact, the old industry format and the buying pattern are never going to come back again. So there is a challenge for industry. Compared to that, we also had been saying that the transformation of Indian IT industry has been slow. They're not in pace with the, or I would put it this way, they're not transforming as fast as their clients are adopting the newer things. Obviously, there is a lag, and that's why the growth is slower compared to technology sector growth, or emerging technology growth. So that industry challenge continues. In case of Infosys, I think it used to get compounded, or it got compounded for the last couple of years because they had internal challenges also. So I think now what Salil has to address is 3 or 4 things. Point number 1, get the growth back. Ideally faster than the industry average, because that's what status and reputation of Infosys as a company had been for last 2 decades. So get the growth back faster than industry average. Point number 2, he need to reinstate confidence first in clients and also employees, so that this is going to be a long-term relation. This is going to be a stable relation. There's going to be sort of a cordial relation amongst all stakeholders. So he has to reinstate that confidence in all stakeholders. Point number 3, I think from Infosys investor perspective, apart from these 2 very crucial and actually to me really more important things, there's a third thing which I think everyone will watch is how he, gels with founders. So that would be the third thing, because which played a very big role in exit of Vishal Sikka. So these 3 parameters surely he need to work on, and I think a third point more from investor perspective. Fourth point, I think for people like me, first and 2 are more important, but fourth point also is important is how he's going to build the strategy and how they're going to articulate that strategy to the clients. So the future, 12 months down the line, 18 months down the line, or 2 years down the line, the performance is much better than what it has been in last couple of years or years before that when Shibu was at the helm. So I think these are the 3-4 things Salil will have to really work on at a very high level. Then one can go and drill down later.
Fair enough, Sudhin. Thanks for joining us and giving us your outlook and also a perspective on what Salil Parekh can bring to Infosys. But we have yet another expert. We have Ajay Srivastava of Dimension Consulting joining us as well on the phone line to talk about this appointment. Hi, Ajay. Thanks for joining us. Your initial thoughts?
I think, one, of course, a good development if the company finally settled its issue with the management. But I believe that, when you look at the appointment, one can clearly see that there has been some thinking to get a non-prima donna kind of a person in the helm of the company. He's not heading a large company. He's coming from a second-tier management level straight into one of the largest listed stocks, which is quite a jump up for him as far as Salil Parekh is concerned. But for Infosys, that's quite a challenge to get someone to come into a leadership role from a sub-leadership position, number 2, number 3 position of another company of a smaller and medium size. So I think it's going to be a challenge because Infosys is a large company with a huge global footprint, listed stock, compared to the incumbent who's coming in with a very different background, perhaps relevant background, I must say, on technical side. He's looking after the cloud services, etc. But I think it's a big, big leap of faith for Infosys to get into somebody who was not seriously running a large corporation on his own and therefore can take over the mantle as quickly as we think it can. It also reflects perhaps that Nandan Nilekani would be staying on longer in a bit more involved role, because that would be necessitated with this person coming in, given the customer interaction, seniority, and everything put together. So I think it's a precursor to say we're okay with a non-flamboyant CEO, we're okay with a medium person, and we will supervise him, guide him, and take this company forward. I think that's been the thinking in the company. So you would see founders perhaps being involved, still involved quite a bit in the company.
Okay, so Ajay, we know that the industry itself is facing a lot of challenges, but what can Salil do for Infosys to, as some suggest, perhaps give a better growth rate as compared to what the industry is moving with its current environment?
See, I think his profile tells the story. That really profile is looking after cloud services, looking after infrastructure services to advanced automation. I think two of the big responsibilities he carries, along with Sajeti at Capgemini, which is what Infosys would try to get in and move faster. Certainly on the cloud platform, they need to do a lot more work, and it's a big area. Infrastructure services, they are really not in the game. HCL Tech is far ahead of the game, so they need to catch up with that. So I think these two would be the big areas for Infosys to start growing. And, it's got a competition. It's got a very well-settled TCS, which is sitting there. It's got a well-settled HCL Tech in the services sector, which is sitting there. So it's going to be a challenge, but the challenge is being good part is that this man comes with a very relevant, focused background from cloud and infrastructure services, which is the need of the hour for Infosys, which is a purely services platform-based company. So I think in a fit-wise is good. As I said, he's not run a large corporation on his own, and that's going to be the challenge.
Okay, Ajay, please hold on. I'm just going to get through a quote from Nandan Nilekani that was just right there on your screen, if you can bring that back. He says that we're delighted to have Salil joining as a CEO and MD of Infosys, and he has a strong track record executing businesses, turnarounds, managing every successful acquisition, and the board believes that he is the right person to lead Infosys at this transformative time in our industry. Ajay, after reading this quote, I want to come back to you, and you said that he will have to work with the founders. In that case, what can the founders do in order to help him out and also perhaps still maintain the distinction of being founders and not necessarily someone who heavily influences, the ongoing work, which has been a bone of contention, especially with respect to Infosys in the past?
No, I think, let's be honest, one of the bone of contention was an underperforming company. If you take out the sentimental, the letters and all, apart from what happened in the previous guy, what was the issue? The issue was an underperforming company where a 2020 plan was given with a lot of promise. That was the core issue which was coming, apart from all those integrity issues, and leave it aside for a minute. The real issue was an underperforming company. And then when you compare TCS with a much more stable management team, much more stable background, they're not doing anything very flamboyant or any different, but producing good quality results, steadily moving ahead. So what will they do is, the founding fathers can do is, one thing is, get this gentleman more acceptability across the organization. I think that's the one paramount task, that if they want to change, they want to address management issues, they want to grow areas, by being there, Nandan can, of course, get lots of middle-level managers, senior-level managers to come to the table and contribute more constructively than perhaps he would have got on his own. I think that will be the first big advantage he will have to get out of the promoters, is to get very wide acceptability inside the corporation, because things will need to change and will change. And on his own, he has not done it at that level ever, right? So he will need help and support to do it, which is why I said I will see that possibly Mr. Nilekani's role would be a lot more extended than what it is. So I think his focus is going to be very clear: get acceptability, get some of the cloud services businesses going, get the infrastructure services going, and see that Infosys catches up on these two parameters, at least to the rest of the competition.
All right, and just one more question, Ajay. He's going to take over on the 2nd of January. How long do you think that a person like Salil can come in and start making some, big changes and actually let that translate into earnings eventually? Do you think it could take a year? Do you think it could take a couple of years? How long should clients and investors give Salil when it comes to this transformation?
I think certainly it's taking him about at least 2 to 3 quarters to articulate a vision, to get his plan going, and so on and so forth. But as you saw, it's very important that in the transition, like what TCS is going through a transition as well, he needs to come up right up the curve immediately, because there is no time to spare. So there is no excuse to say that my customer acquisitions are going down or my engagements are going down, etc. So while, yes, his long-term plans on cloud, etc., may take a little while to firm up, but I don't think so investors or market is going to give him too much, maybe a quarter or 2 quarters time to get his act together and start performing at least at the industry level, if not the leadership. And the key here is, which he cannot compromise, is the profitability leadership which Infosys enjoys. I think that will be his biggest challenge, is how to keep growing, delivering numbers while keeping that EBITDA margin intact. That has been the hallmark of Infosys. That's been the challenge what Sikka was going through, that he could not get the same EBITDA margin for his new business ideas. And that will be a challenge for this gentleman as well, because he needs to keep it profitability up, which incidentally is top of the line issue with the promoters. They want this company to be highly profitable. They have said it clearly, and that is the biggest challenge. So I guess 2 quarters, and I think the clock will start ticking for the new incumbent as well.
Valid points, Ajay. Thank you for joining us and giving us your perspective on the new nominee, that is the new CEO and MD nominee for Infosys. But of course, we have a lot more. Let's listen in as to what the NASSCOM president, R. Chandrasekharan, told Sajid Mangat on Infosys' new appointment.
I think this is certainly a very positive development from multiple perspectives. First and foremost, Salil is a well-known figure in the IT industry. He was leading the application services at Capgemini. So he's well-known in the industry knows him well, and so he's well-rooted in, the ecosystem here. The second is he also has, by virtue of having been in Capgemini, multinational experience, global exposure and experience. So that's certainly another factor which would stand Infosys in good stead. And finally, I think this brings the curtains down on the various issues which arose, when Vishal Sikka left Infosys. Mm-hmm. And there were many questions about the change and, what would be the roadmap ahead. And I think Infosys needs to be complimented on having brought things to a swift close and having settled that issue and enabling him now to get on with the job.
Sir, one final question. You've been interacting with Salil over the years as part of the industry. What are his core strengths? And given the fact that the industry itself is going through some rough patches, is in terms of global growth and challenges and new technology, which is challenging the industry. How well is he equipped to handle those challenges?
As I said, he's been heading the application services globally for Capgemini, and therefore the task ahead is something which he's completely familiar with. And so I think that experience and expertise is very much already there. And I think he's generally very well regarded in the industry. So it's something which I think... I don't think that from that point of view there are any issues or questions that I foresee.
That was the president of NASSCOM talking to us about the new appointee for the post of MD and CEO at Infosys. But we also have Sarabjit Kaur Nangra of Angel Broking joining us on the phone line. Hi Sarabjit, I'm sure you've heard the news. Your initial thoughts on this new appointment for Infosys?
See, whatever I know about him, I think it just looks like a decent appointment. And given that he has an expertise in cloud and new technologies, has done strategic work over there in terms of consultation, and has been a stable force in Capgemini for a pretty long time. I think these are quite some virtue which possibly Infosys can utilize to make sure that they are able to overcome the challenges which lie within the company also, and challenges which possibly they face as an industry leader. So I think right now looks like a good decision, and possibly when the person speaks for himself and for the company, I think you would come to know what he thinks about how he wants to place his career within the organization and how he wants to take Infosys ahead, actually.
Sarabjit, as someone who tracks this particular company very closely, what would you like to see from this CEO and MD in terms of changes and transformation for Infosys that can not only bring back growth but also perhaps grow a kind of niche in the newer technologies?
From as a CEO perspective, there are a couple of things which I want clarity. One is that Infosys for long has not been able to provide a stable top-rung management, which of the likes of Narayan Murthy and others who have for a pretty long time been stable because being at the top, you have to first learn how to be stable at that position and then execute it. And secondly, as far as new technology, obviously what is his viewpoint as to, how he takes it forward. Another thing is that transparency in Infosys has been taken as an issue, probably how he would like to take it forward. Stakeholders, they have a lot of cash on the balance sheets, how he would like to reward shareholders. So these are a couple of 4-5 questions. I think if he's clear in his mind as to how he wants to take it, I think that we will make life of stakeholders of Infosys easier, much easier than earlier chairmen and CEOs have done. I think these are issues which are been plaguing this company for a pretty long time, and company has been addressing them in bits and bytes, but not fully. So if he's been able to fully deliver on all these key parameters, I think then he would have secured his job also, and probably would have done great job for Infosys like most of these earlier successful MDs and CEOs have done for Infosys.
Sarabjit, please stay on with us. Bloomberg Quint's Sajit Mangat also had a chance to speak to CP Gurnani, the Tech Mahindra head, and let's listen into as to what he had to say.
I mean, I know Salil very well. He's a great friend, and when I was a NASSCOM chairman, I had a chance to interact with him quite closely. So I think it's a great choice.
So, what do you think is his key strength areas?
I mean, A, people management, number 2, strategy, number 3, he knows application services, number 4, he has handled global businesses.
Okay. And do you think that it's going to be an easy transition for him from Capgemini to Infosys?
I mean, every organization has got its own culture. Every organization, ultimately you have to adopt. The organization has to adopt to the leader has to adopt to the organization. But he's worked in India, lived in Bombay. I don't think it will be a bigger challenge because he wasn't like a French guy living in France. He's an Indian guy.
Okay.
So, I mean, there is always a little bit of adoption, little bit of adjacency, but I don't think that it should be a big issue.
Okay, so that is CP Gurnani offering his comments on the news MD and CEO. But Sarabjit, I'm going to come back to you on the aspect of the founders. Now, from the experts that we spoke to earlier, they said that to a certain extent, Mr. Parekh will need some help from the founders. But again, we'll have to see some clear distinction between the role of the founders as against the role of the MD and CEO. What do you think can the founders do when it comes to running business, and how can they help Salil Parekh coming in?
As far as I understand the whole issue, or I understand, definitely there has to be a level of respect and a level of, aloofness between promoters and the guys who are operating the business. But that is to the extent that the culture and the value system and ethics and obviously the the stakeholders are taken care of. I think in case that is not done, I think if promoters interfere, and I don't, there are various ways to look at it. If promoters interfere, professionals that it's taken as a sign that probably they're interfering in the professional world. But I think in certain issues, a level of active ownership of a company is a good sign. Actually, I take it a very positive that Mr. Narayan Murthy, after leaving the board, also is cognizant and is careful and is worried about or is concerned about the corporate governance and other issues which plague Infosys. We have seen Infosys over the period of time. The level of transparency has reduced. The level of the way the shareholders were getting rewarded has reduced. So I guess these are issues which, as an analyst, also I am disturbed why they don't distribute cash which is lying on the balance sheet. So these are issues which are genuine. There is nothing to do with promoter, or I don't read it that way, because I don't think he was harassed for. I mean, earlier, as far as my information and my understanding was, I don't think promoters of Infosys ever harassed the MD level. So I think that is fair enough transaction which happens. Even as an analyst, I'm concerned about many things that company does. So I guess instead of making it whether it's a promoter interfering or MD needing 100% and freedom, I think all our stakeholders, whether it be the promoter, be the MD, because we are, even as an analyst, I have a certain degree of commitment that I need from the company so that I also can communicate and I also feel confident about the stock and the company. So I guess we are concerned parties, we are concerned stakeholders. So I think everybody should be taken care of in a transparent and a very mature and genuine way. Right? And Mr. Narayan Murthy has been one of those, who has led the company. He's not just opened a company and left it to professional and is trying to interfere. Those are, those kind of corporate tidbits can be considered mischievous, but I didn't find anything mischievous here. I think it's good that both sides should be alive and kicking and should be making sure that the stakeholder interest is taken care rather than their personal egos or personal, unless it goes to personal ego or a personal agenda where it becomes dirty and murkier. I think if it's left to the profitability and the prosperity of stakeholder, I think it's pretty healthy. So unless that has not happened in Infosys so far. So I'm not worried on those accounts, whether how much freedom he will take or how much he wants to demand. That's an equation they have to settle for the proper functioning. But I think ultimately, I'm sure both of them should work towards the value system of the company. Even as an outsider, I'm not a stakeholder. But as an analyst, I would like that both of them work towards more transparency and rewarding stakeholders. So I guess that's a genuine demand. Anybody who's involved in the company is interested in getting rewarded from that kind of a company would have those questions. I think a board member or a promoter, both should be equally answered.
Okay, Sarabjit, just one more question. Look, I mean, we know that they have guided for a 5.5 to 6.5 growth rate for this particular year, and this is not a very good growth, at least as far as the consideration for a lot of the other, investors are concerned. My question then is that what would you like to see in strategy going forward that could, see an improvement in growth for Infosys?
See, there are various versions to the story that, possibly that because Sikka is out, so they gave a conservative, probably they'll beat it up. They might overshadow the guidance. But my question is that whatever be the reason why they have downgraded the guidance, there are a couple of reasons behind it. So possibly it's a genuine concern. So I'm not reading too much into current year's guidance. What I would suggest is that instead of looking at yearly numbers, because see, we know this industry is going through a transformation where older services are getting commoditized and the new services have to contribute higher for this industry to show you a kind of a stable growth. Though these large companies are showing you stable growth, this is primarily because they have a larger market share compared to the marginal players. So that is the reason that these companies are still growing. Because the TCS, Infosys showing a volume growth of 3%, such a huge base, I don't think is a small feat. So they are doing a great job out of it. But yeah, I think what I would like to hear is that my concern is Infosys has never been able to, for the last couple of years, been able to have a top stable top in terms of MDs and CEOs. So probably if they can stabilize that position, then any strategy that, because even Mr. Sikka has put up a strategy which had a target in mind and which were looking forward to 14% of a growth. I guess if that kind of a growth is visible to any MD of the Infosys or the company, that means it's achievable. Only thing they need to make sure is that they get MDs and CEOs who are stable and can get it executed in a very fair and a very fair manner, so that those targets don't take a hit and a miss. So targets become meaningless if you don't have a stable head in charge of the company. So I hope that this kind of concerns are addressed first, that they are able to stabilize their management structure, right. So that any milestone that any of the MDs come in, they are able to execute it and get it done for the stakeholders.
Right. Well, thanks, Sarabjit, for giving us your perspective on the latest development from Infosys. But Bloomberg Queen's Nishant Sharma had a chance to speak to Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, who is a part of the Infosys board. Here's a slice of that conversation. Listen in.
Understands global trends, that he works for a fairly, a sizable multinational company, which also has a very large workforce in India. Obviously, culturally, he understands, India and the Indian business and the Indian, workforce. So we felt that was a very good, fit as well. So I think overall, he came through as a holistically very good candidate.
Right. And how many candidates did you look into before finalizing it on?
So we had a pretty large canvas of candidates to begin with, and in pretty large numbers. I mean, I would say that we had at least 25 candidates to choose from. And then we basically whittled down the list to a short list.
Right.
And then that was then finally formed the basis on which we went with Salil.
Right. And what do you think, what are these core strengths that will complement Infosys in driving the growth? Now we are into a phase of transition to a digital approach as well. And
yeah, so I think Salil brings on board the kind of skills that we are looking for. He has been a turnaround manager in Capgemini. He has grown new businesses very well in Capgemini. He understands the digital space very well. He's considered to be a good people person. He is a very soft-spoken, but at the same time very determined and firm person.
Mm-hmm.
That was the member of the Infosys board, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, giving us reasons behind choosing Salil Parekh. But we also have Menaka back with us. Menaka, I've spoken to a lot of experts out here, and we were discussing the role of the founders in in Infosys future ahead. Any comments that you'd like to offer?
I was listening into all of their comments, and Agam, I think there were three things that stood out. Of course, any new CEO has to deal with business challenges that the company faces as well as the industry faces. So there's no underscoring that point. But at Infi, the role becomes more complex because of two issues that keep coming up. And whether it was Sudhin Apte, an industry expert who spoke of this, or Ajay of Dimensions Consulting, a market expert who, observed this of Infosys, or Sarabjit, who's an equity analyst, and she observed this of Infosys. I think the two things the company currently needs to very quickly do, and that will be Salil's responsibility, is this immense loss of trust, the inability to have found stable leadership ever since the founders exited running the company on a day-to-day management operations basis. I think that loss of trust, the way Vishal Sikka was dealt with or treated, I think that is going to be one very important thing that not just Salil will have to focus on from here on, but Nandan Nilekani, as the current chairman of the board, and the other founders who may be, in some sense or the other, participating in the company's future from the outside, and I use the words carefully, they will also have to enable Salil to be able to restore this loss of trust. So I think that's going to be the one critical thing that he's going to have to overcome. And that in itself also includes this issue of promoter interference. Many eyebrows have been raised as to why the promoters continue to want to have a say in day-to-day operations of the company. And I think we finally saw the last word being said on that, thankfully, when Nandan decided, ironically, not to release the internal investigation reports pertaining to that Panaya acquisition, and we heard no more murmurs from Narayan Murthy. Mr. Murthy is the one who is spearheading the campaign to release the reports, on the basis of which Vishal Sikka had to finally resign, and they also lost a key member of their board, Mr. Seshasai. So given that Nandan chose not to release those internal reports, despite Mr. Murthy's continuous demands to do so, and despite Nandan's decision not to release them, Mr. Murthy's silence, I think that proves to us finally that the promoters have decided that their interference in the company is not necessarily adding to the company. That should hopefully provide Salil with enough basis and ground to be able to move forward and deal with the business and the industry challenges, which both you and I know are tremendous at this point in time. So it will be critical. He starts from Jan 2nd, from what I understand. He's going to have to work really, really hard to get Infosys back into leadership position. And that's going to be a very tough ride ahead. And you and I will be watching that closely, Agam, I imagine.
We certainly will, Manika. Well, thanks for joining us and giving us, a few other things to think about. But, well, there you have it, guys. We do have a new CEO and MD at Infosys, and well, he has a very, very big task up ahead, not only in terms of strategy and bringing back growth and above the industry growth, but considering the fact that Infosys is such a large and important IT company for India, but also because of the various, problems it has gone through, especially in the recent times. We will be watching out for that, but with that, it's a wrap on this edition as far as a new Infosys CEO and, well, as his appointment goes. Stay tuned at the Bloomberg Quint, and we will keep bringing you more.